What ho, travellers and adventurers! Welcome to my tavern. Have a seat, take a drink, and relax. Listen to my tales. I am the Bardic Knock. Alright, so today I'm going to be talking to you about encounters and designing them. And I'm going to give you a few tips and tricks and all that good stuff that I have learned from years of playing and from reading countless books and just what I have learned essentially, and hopefully you can use it in whatever capacity. So, first off, what is an encounter in a role playing game? Well, an encounter is anything. It is any obstacle you can throw at your players that they need to overcome in order to proceed forward. So, that can be just a fight. You guide your players into a room, and in that room there's a group of orcs. You need to get past them. There's an encounter, and you can fight them. You can sneak around them. You can set them all on fire, like whatever. An encounter can also be a trap. Ooh, behind the locked door there's a big nefarious set of spikes. Okay, yeah, there's your encounter. It can also be just a thing, like something physical to overcome, like a great cavernous gorge that your players need to cross, or it can be a rickety rope bridge that looks like it might collapse. Or instead of being a physical thing, an encounter can be a conversation. So your players need to talk to an NPC and convince that NPC to let them go forward on their quest. Encounters are probably one of the most important aspects of a role playing game. Because, well, without encounters, you're just a group of friends sat around making your imaginary friends talk to each other. Which is fun, sure it is. But you don't need to be playing a game to do that. You can go to a bar or to a coffee shop and achieve the same thing. So to play a game, you need to have encounters. Okay, so when you are thinking up your encounters, the best thing about role playing games is, unlike other forms of entertainment, books or movies or even video games, there's a million ways. In fact, there's infinite ways in which your players can beat your encounter. They don't have to fight the orcs in the room. They can wait till they've fallen asleep and sneak past them. They can walk in and with a good enough charisma roll, with diplomacy or persuasion, they can convince the orcs that, I know, we're your friends. You don't want to fight us. Your players can do whatever they want. Unfortunately, that means it's your job as the DM to predict an infinite number of possibilities and plan consequences accordingly. Easy job, right? Yay! Okay, so when it comes to planning these things and whatnot, your first port of call should be to look at your players. How are they playing the game? If they are playing as mighty heroes on an epic quest to defeat the great and powerful evil, you can kind of assume that if they see a group of orcs, they might draw out their swords and their bows and whatever else, and charge in hell for leather. If they're playing a comedic game and everything's hardy ha and who can make the funniest shenanigans occur, well, then they might not rush in. They might think, okay, how can I make this funny? How can I make an orc slip on the banana peel? How can I make the orc's trousers fall down? In which case, you need to plan for that. The other big thing that is, to take into account is what your players are playing. If you have a group of fighters and barbarians and monks and whatever else, they will probably want to go and fight because that's what they do. They want to show off their abilities, their skills, and more importantly, their numbers. On the other hand, if you have, some wizards and some rogues and other sneaky, sly characters, they aren't going to rush in and challenge the 8-foot orc to a straight up fist fight. They're going to sneak around it or lure it out with a distraction. They're going to do anything they can to not get into straight up fisticuffs. The same way, if you have, bards and sorcerers and anything else with ridiculously high charisma, they'll be more inclined to march in bravely and boldly and tell the orcs that, no, 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 you should not attack me because I am your boss's bestest best buddy. And then, they're lying their way through it. They're going to convince them, or, they might even try and just throw money at them because that's an option if they have that. If you get to know your players and you get to know your game and how you think they're going to do things, yeah, you've got it sorted. You've got your plan. They're going to come in, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and everything's great. And then your players do that thing that players just love doing by ruining everything. That they come across the group of orcs, and the next thing you know, your fighter is trying to be the diplomat whilst your wizard is swinging a sword, and the rogue is trying to convince them to play a dice game with them. You just gotta love players. They can destroy all of your hard work in a matter of seconds. Anyway, if I could give you a definite, surefire way to fix this, to know what they're going to do, to make sure that they always do what you plan, I so would, after I'd applied it to everything I'd ever done, because wouldn't it be lovely if your nice players just followed your expertly laid out plan? They aren't going to. So, well, looks like it's your job to predict everything they're going to do. I highly advise that for every encounter you make, so for every fight, for every trap, for every conversation they need to have, you need to plan out at least 3, if not 4 or 5 or 20, if you're desperately trying to figure out every option, different ways that your players can win. And you do this by just thinking, what would I do if I was this type of character? So, okay, if I was playing the fighter, how would I approach this? If I was playing the wizard, how would I approach this? And so on and so forth. Just to give a simplistic example, so you're going to present your players with a scene, an encounter similar to this. As you approach the abandoned barn, you can see that a battle has recently taken place. There are blood splatters outside and up on the walls, and the latch on the barn door is broken, leaving the door slightly ajar, allowing you to peer in. From outside, you can hear grunts and groans in a brutish language. If any of you can understand Orcish, you know what they are saying. They are saying, "Ugh, this wasn't worth the fight. This was meaningless. When's the next one?" You can also hear the unmistakable sound of steel clattering on the stone floor. What do you do? And you've planned this out. You've figured, okay, your fighter, he's gonna kick that door open and draw out his sword and go, "Fight me!" And your rogue, he's going to sneak around and climb up from the outside and peer in through a top window and drop down and find the first orc he can find and slit his throat with a sneak attack. And your wizard slash resident arsonist is going to go, "I want to set it on fire." Well, you plan. You plan for all of these options. So, if you think that your wizard is going to just set the barn on fire, you make sure that you know that if a fire breaks out, your orcs are just going to charge on out there and get into a fight. Or you're going to make sure that one of the orcs inside just so happens to be a shaman or a spellcaster who can counteract the fire. He can create water and put it out. If you know your rogue is going to try and sneak around the back, you have an alarm laid out, prepared for him. Or you have an enemy he can't kill in a single blow, thus leaving him wide open, forcing the fighter to rush in and protect him. You go even further. If you think one of your high charisma characters is going to waltz on in there and convince them all to drop their weapons, or to turn traitor and attack the big boss, you make that big boss have a high charisma and have him make a threat to anyone who dare betray him that he will slaughter them without mercy. Or you make the big boss a shaman and have him cast a charm spell or a suggestion to force his cohorts and his underlings to not be swayed by mere words alone. Obviously, don't get carried away. Don't ruin every plan, because then your players don't get to feel like they achieved something. If you're always thwarting whatever their plan is, eventually they'll stop trying to come up with them, or they'll start coming up with more and more ludicrous plans which you couldn't possibly have planned for. Which is fine, providing you can adapt and get ready for them, but you want to let your players win. You want to let them think they achieved a thing, that they outsmarted the enemy, that they could just win by their genius ideas. Because, your player wants to feel good, he wants to feel clever, he wants to feel strong, and you should let them do that. Whilst providing, stops and counters to just make it not too easy. Because otherwise every encounter can be over before it begins, and there is nothing quite so depressing as your great big looming boss monster being taken out in a single turn because your players had a better plan. The other thing you really do need to take into account is that designing encounters is not a science, it's definitely an art form. So it's always open to interpretation, it's always going to have some fluidity and be very malleable so you can change it on the fly. And however that is, if the encounter seems too easy, if your players have stormed in and already taken out half of the orcs, well, heck, you had best try and find a way to give those orcs some reinforcement, or no, have the orc spellcaster raise them as zombies or something to just throw something your players might not have been expecting in there. Or vice versa, if your encounter is far too difficult. Um, just an example, in a recent campaign I did, my big evil sorcerer, he unleashed a breath weapon which nearly outright killed two characters. Slight miscalculation on my part, and so my reaction was to go, oh, well, I'm not letting him do that again because otherwise I would win. And I don't want to just win. I want to not create a players versus DM dynamic. I want to create a players with DM dynamic because I'm all in all quite a nice DM. I want my players to win. I want them to slay the evil wizard and defeat the dragon and fetch the sacred amulet of MacGuffin so that then they can feel good and I get to play out more of my story because I like my story and I want my players to do it. If you are playing a game in which you are killing off characters and you're you know slaying players in a single round and that's how you've always played and that's how your players want to play, that's great. You can do a Gygaxian-esque dungeon crawl where characters are expected to die and you just keep chugging along because that's fun. That can be loads of fun. It depends entirely on how you want to play and what game you are playing. And obviously, if you get too carried away with always trying to beat your players and show them you're better at the game, pulling out obscure monsters or powerful traps and things they can't avoid, you run the risk of upsetting and alienating your players because if they feel that the game is just your personal power trip, why would they want to play? No one wants to play with the person who always has to win. You know, because it's kind of boring. And if it's not fun, nobody wants to join in. So you do need to find that balance between giving them something fun and difficult and just proving that you have the biggest set of dice in the room. All in all, that's all I'm going to say for now. I mean, yes, I could go on forever and a day thinking up different examples and how your players could overcome it and how you can counter it. And in the future, I will produce more videos with more sample encounters and different ways you can counteract things. And you can take these and you can steal them and claim them as your own genius creation and impress all of your friends and players because you thought up something big and clever. And that's cool. I am looking forward to making these videos for you. And, you know, if you have ideas that you think I should, come up with a counter for, or to try and outwit anything I can come up with. Share them, comment, please do. Just throw everything you have at me, because I love learning new things and I love hearing new things. Tell me your stories. Tell me how you accidentally killed your entire party because the dragon was too strong. Or tell me how your party one-shotted your great evil necromancer because you forgot to check something. just, yeah, just tell me things. And so comment, like this video, share it, subscribe, and I am so excited about making more of these in the future. As for now, I am the Bardic Knock, saying farewell and wishing you happiness and good adventuring.